and gentlemen, I welcome you to the grand finals of this debate. I would like to remind us all that our theme in this debate has been exploring the space. And with all due respect, we believe that our motions have failed to the satisfaction of that debate. And after 8 teams of registration, we only had 2 teams reaching this great grand finals. We want to know what bank will be able to take it home. Is a Standard Chartered Bank winning the Euros or Stanbic Bank winning the Euros? Standard Chartered Bank is team proposition, having their first speaker Zoyala, second speaker Everett Denise, third speaker Peter, and the opposition team Zagara Ian, Shawalianga Henry, Pamela Devasi, and the motion tonight, this House would nationalize SpaceX's mission to colonize Mars. Not more than any other time, we should be beginning this debate at exactly 3:20. With me, the great panel of judges are going to be with us, and that is James Okuku as the Deputy Chief Adjudicator of this Metropolitan Education Students Association Internal Debate Open One as the judge this great grand final. Also, the same panel is going to have Okwaput Israel, Jerome, Matthew, Calvin David, and Vincent. That is the panel tonight. Okay, so in one, we'll be able to begin. Team proposition, we are ready when you're ready.
Okay, hello, am I audible?
Yes, you're very audible.
Oh, cool. So I'll be the Prime Minister. I think the second speaker will be Peter. Then the third speaker will be Ayebare. Just to correct so that we are all on point. I think Peter is using a device. Is it a camera or something of that sort? I think. So I just hope he's around. Okay. Let me just get something right, then I'll start shortly. In case anyone has a POI, just type it in the text area. Like type POI, don't type the whole POI because I can't be able to read it because I'll maybe have a few things to say. But feel free to say POI, then I'll certainly take one or two from anyone. Other than that, if the floor is mine, I can start.
Please do begin.
Can I start?
Yes, please begin. 7 minutes, 1 minute beginning, protected times, and the last minute protected time, reply speech, 3 and 15 seconds. You can begin.
Okay. I can work with. I think. Okay. I'm just drinking that. Okay. Okay. So starting in three, two, one. Panel, this debate is a policy debate. That's to say, it's about evaluating what nationalism entirely is about, but also what SpaceX mission is entirely about. But more importantly, it's about establishing whether it is in the best interest to nationalize SpaceX's mission to colonize Mars. Because realize that this debate is not about the benefits of colonizing Mars, but it is about evaluating nationalism specifically in regards to SpaceX. So we think that there's necessity for contextualization in those two regards. So firstly, on nationalization, we think the nationalization, in terms of like the general concept, is that it basically means that you're literally changing something from government ownership to something that is rather from private ownership to government ownership. We think that there are two things that literally entails those. That's to say, in terms of this debate, firstly, we say that it is specifically for ensuring that you still have the capacity to still provide to government to people. That's to say that governments ensure that they always exist to still serve the people at the grassroots level. But the second thing, it's about establishing a global government specifically for the purpose of SpaceX's mission, because realize that there is a difference in governments that exist across the whole global sphere, and it is not only restricted to one specific jurisdiction. That means for this to actually be effective, we need a collective government rather than one that is independent or one that is domineering in terms of like one being a superpower. So we think that does not work because that's still discriminative. So what we are standing for is a global government literally nationalizing SpaceX's mission to Mars. But the second thing then about SpaceX's mission or program, we say that the general view is that it literally entails traveling to Mars. But we say that there are actually three things to this. Firstly, is that it entails the depopulation mechanism of Earth. That's to say, it is primarily founded on depopulating Earth in terms of like the people who are literally becoming more and more proliferated in the world. That's to say that they are in more aspect becoming overpopulated. That means that they are competing so much for the natural resources at this point. But the second thing, it also involves migration. That's to say, it involves the movement of people specifically from Earth to Mars. That means that they can either decide to stay there for the rest of their lives, or they can still have that opt-in mechanism of literally coming back to Earth. But the third thing is that it is non-instantaneous. That's to say, even if we understand that the urgency of depopulation, we still think that the mere fact that it's non-instantaneous, that's to say it's gradual, we still think it plays better in terms of like provision for people to ensure that there's some form of accuracy when they are literally making the decision to actually participate in it. So our model is quite simple, a five-piece model that we provide to you. Firstly, we say that SpaceX's program holder, that's to say Elon Musk or whoever shareholders that are within it, will literally hand over to the United government that will literally establish. That's to say, they will hand over the entire project to that specific government. But the second thing is that compensation shall be done to all these specific individuals, because realize we think that the whole globe are collectively put together can still have the capacity to compensate those individuals or Elon Musk who thinks that he literally has wealth. But the third thing is that all nations shall be part of the decision making mechanism. That's to say, they'll still have something called consensus that still plays better for everyone without any form of compromisation. So we still think the data for everyone. But the third thing is that the fourth thing is that experts shall be maintained, shall still be maintained, and all the employees that exist and all those other people who literally are required for that specific SpaceX, and you shall actually bring in even more people from different jurisdictions. And the fifth and final thing is that it will be free, and returns will be as government. That's to say, returns from that specific initiative will be by means of how governments literally benefit in the day-to-day world. That's to say, in terms of the taxation in their specific areas. That's to say, when people literally go to Mars, that means they can still have the capacity to tax them there. So we think it plays better for everyone then. So why then should we nationalize SpaceX's mission to colonize Mars? Because realize the mission is to colonize Mars. Firstly, is on the capacity and who plays better in terms of capacity. Is it under someone who literally is an individual? It's under someone who has a collective goal. That's to say, in terms of like governance. We say this in two ways. Firstly, is on the question of resources. We say that largely on the side of opposition as an individual, just to say SpaceX being run by an individual who is capitalistic means it is unsustainable. That's to say they can literally run it for something like 5 years or 10 years, but we think that is not enough for the sustainability. We are talking about a century or even a lifetime or even for entire decade. That's to say for people who literally want to go there to and fro every time. We think the mere fact that it then means that it's unsustainable because these people still have to acquire resources. It means that it is better for someone who literally has those resources to be the one to actually run it. We think that a collective government entails that people who literally have those resources, they can sufficiently still run it. But the second thing is that it
Engage.
entails the second thing that we still address the issue of marginalization. That's to say, SpaceX being run by an individual might be premised on marginalization of specific individuals. This can be done in terms of like the fees that you put on specific people. At the point where you literally put fees on specific people, we think that is entirely being marginalistic to those specific people. What our side entails is that you provide betterment for people without any form of compromisation. So at the point where you have that kind of betterment, we think it goes a long way to inform people that they still have that capacity to actually unite with others. So we think we still cater for those. The second argument then we tell you in terms of a principle, but let me first take the pure I should.
Okay, so you still don't show us why everything you explain is exclusive to nationalism alone, because even privatized companies, even government institutions still set prices for goods and commodities in command economies. Like, how is there exclusivity? Please explain.
I think you do not get the entire case. What we tell you in terms of like the difference is that who literally has better resources, but who also is not marginalistic. So I think you do not get the entire context of our debate. But the second thing I'll tell you that also addresses still your MPOI is of the social contract. That's to say, principally, governments have a mandate to ensure that they still protect their specific citizens. At the point where governments still have that mandate, it means that they still have they should still have the capacity to provide to those specific people. What we say from our side is that firstly, we still provide for governments to still maintain that social contract. That's to say that they are not only it's not only the mission is not only premised on capitalistic ideals, but it's also being premised on ideals that are unifying for individuals, but also primarily premised on provision of services to everyone. We think our side ensures that you still provide for those people entirely without any form of compromisation. But the third thing we tell you in terms of argumentation is on the necessity to curtail the exploitative tendencies by individuals. That's to say capitalism. We say that firstly on a rudimentary level, capitalism is premised by being unfair to people. That's to say it's never fair to people in terms of like the pricing mechanism. At the point where it's unfair to people, it means that there is necessity for us to curtail that exploitative tendencies of the capitalism. It can only be done by nationalism. Why? Because government then sets either it can set a fair price or it can say it is free, just like our model literally tells you. That means that you literally make it possible for anyone to possess or to actually to be part of the SpaceX mission. That means they entirely still contribute towards the travel of individuals to Mars or to any area that they desire. Our world ensures, or our side ensures, that we still curtail that exploitative tendency that comes from capitalism, and that goes a long way. So the first thing to say is that what do we address when we actually nationalize? Three things. The first thing is that we address the accountability question that governments entirely have. That's to say, in terms of like government resources. We think that we address the accountability question that governments entirely have. That's to say, in terms of like government resources. We think that we address the accountability because we think that there are different governments that have different resources. That's to say that there are different governments that are outside the Earth's orbit that can still provide the refueling stations for those specific mission or for those specific airspaces without any charges. We think that that goes a long way to ensure that those governments are accountable. But at a more important level, it also means that the acquisition of resources that are required for those specific for that mission to be conducted will still be acquired at an easier level. What we say from our side is that we go then Okay, I don't think someone is timing, but it's cool. What we say from our side is that it goes a long way to ensure that citizens still see where the resources are going, or still have some form of accountability that is being proliferated to them by their governments. The second thing we say is on what we address is that we still have some form of collective action. That's to say, different countries coming together for one specific cause. That's to say, the population of the entire earth. At the point where they actually come together, it means that they can actually still have some form of reparation that they provide to the entire globe. That's to say, in terms of them ensuring that they still have some form of sustain. It is the only side that has minimum funds that are literally used, because realize that even if I'm opposition, I think that these things are not entirely exclusive to our side. We think that minimum funds is actually exclusive on our side. Why? On our side, why? Because governments do not have any form of initiative for them to actually benefit from this, but rather they are doing it for a purpose of ensuring that SpaceX mission is one that is entirely premised on depopulating people, because they think that's its primary foundation. But also, it is entirely premised on being non-capitalistic or non-profit oriented, just like it is currently. But the third thing, the fifth thing to talk about is basically what are the impacts that you get from our side. So, firstly, we say that we provide redress to the poor individuals that are existing. That's to say, people who feel that they wouldn't be able to afford it when it's left under the capitalistic initiative. But the second thing is that we still have that unifying mechanism of nations. That's to say, the mere fact that we are establishing a global sphere where everyone or every government has the capacity to contribute to it. Or time up. Okay. Um, proposition is called.
Okay, thank you very much for that flamboyant speech. Let us have team opposition begin.
Mano, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible and clear. Please begin.
Yeah, before I start this debate, I was requesting that I first log out and log in. Is it fine with you?
Okay, that will make you win. Please do.
Okay, thank you. Just a minute.
Are you back? Agaba Ian, are you present? If he doesn't join in 1 minute, you shall have to do his speech.
Okay, I'm now here. Am I still audible?
Audible and clear, please begin.
Okay, I'm starting my speech in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pano. This house would nationalize Pex's mission to colonize Mars. Pano. We think before I even start the debate, we think what we get from team government is sort of shitty, and we are going to show you how we are going to engage their points and make them lose this debate. We think when they bring that point of capacity, we think when they talk about that governments have that sort of resources, meaning that they will be able to sustainable in this mission of colonizing Mars, we think this is out. Why? We think at a point in time this mission is given to governments. One, we think let's first talk about the nature of government itself. We think governments, one, might politicize or militarize this sort of mission. At the end of the day, we find that they are for them. But we also think that some governments are autocratic in nature, meaning at the end of the day, we might find that these people that have been actually looking for a safe space to come out of Earth and maybe go to Mars, we think that sort of space, global space without interaction from these individuals will actually be out in their side, right? So we think that sort of capacity or resourcefulness is not even exclusive in their world. Why? Because we show you that even in our side, because we show you that even on our side, these governments, these billionaires have that sort of resources, right? Because at the end of the day, that's why they have been able to put that sort of mission in itself. So, Pano, their point of necessity, I think all that is out. Pano, sort of context and characterization in tonight's debate. Pano, let's first talk about the burden of tonight's debate. The burden of the mission. We think the burden of the mission to colonize Mars is one, to undertake that sort of humanity in the global space without interaction from the individuals. One, but Pano, we'll be able to show you how we shall get that sort of sustainability, efficiency on our side, which we think they aren't going, which we think they have said we do not actually have. Pano, first understand the sort of nationalizing itself. Pano, we think from our own side of the house, nationalizing means one, allowing governments to take full responsibility of the mission in terms of funding, directing, setting rules, and all of that. But secondly, it means that the government has that sort of higher percentage in terms of partnership. But we have showed you how that is even bad. Why? Because we have showed you the nature of governments itself, how they are autocratic in nature and sort of right. So we think not nationalizing means one, government is able to set that sort of rules and regulations in which these billionaires and companies can take part or with full control, right? So we think their point of saying that they will actually get that sort of taxation, even though people are able to go to Mars, even though the Earth is underpopulated, we think that is out because we show you in our side these that sort of regulation will be there in that governments will regulate what these billionaires are going to do or what these companies are going to do. So understand that these billionaires will be able to fulfill that sort of constitutional regulations that are bounded by the policies not to victimize the people, right? So we think that sort of taxation is even good because governments are then able to get that sort of taxation, right? So we think even in our side, we show you how it is not even nationalizing spaces mission is what we are going on as team opposition. Question of why we shouldn't nationalize spaces mission is what we are going on as team opposition. Pan, we show you the nature of governments. One, we show you how they are autocratic in nature, meaning that they have that chance to dictate or monopolize that sort of project. And the impact of this is that people won't get that safe space at the end of the day. Because one, there will be that sort of continuous of what they have been facing on Earth. So at the end of the day, you find that they will get that sort. There will be not that sort of solution, right? So we think our case looks like this. We'll get that sort of taxation. sort of sustainability. Why? Because we show you billionaires are able to business. We think at a point in time where these billionaires are able to work in hand with the policies that are actually been put there by the governments and are able to pay the taxes. We think they are what is even more better of this mission to Mars. Why? Because at the end of the day they need that sort of buy-ins, and at the end of the day they have to work for that sort of buy-ins, because that sort of buy-ins is got from their actions, right? So we think in our own side of the house we are able to show you how there will be sustainability, and in their side of the house that is not there, right? So Pano, we think even talking about the outcome of this sort of sustainability one, people will undertake that sort of humanity in the global space freely without interaction, because at the end of the day these billionaires will be able to make that sort of mission to what the people do need. So we think that sort of better consistency in colonizing Mars will actually be there, because we show it at our own house side of the house there is that sort of utility, and the resources are still there. So Pano, we also think billionaires will not be able to victimize people, because one, these people are up to money, right? So at the end of the day, they do what people do need, right? So at the end of the day, they will do what the people need, and they will not actually victimize that sort of mission. But we think from side governments will be able to victimize that sort of mission. Why? Because we show you these governments are autocratic in nature. One, so at the end of the day, they will put there what they will put there what will actually benefit them and precise all this. So at the end of the day, we show you even that sort of governments, how these governments do exist, and how they do monopolize all that sort of thing. But remember,
We are remembering, but we have forgotten you, Mr. Gabayan. Are you still speaking?
hello, am I still there?
Yes. Can you please continue?
Okay, so partner, remember the case of government is bad. Why? Because we show you that there will be that sort of draconian government, in that that sort of continuation of further entrenching in the autocracy, even in Mars, that they have been facing on Earth will be there, partner. So the impact of this is that one, people will not get that sort of safe space that they have actually been wanting. So that at the end of the day, people who would want to get that sort of maximum and that sort of utilities on Mars will actually be out in their side. Secondly, it also means that Mars itself would be a replica of Earth, one, because which it will actually abort the original plan for which it was an alternative as it was created in the first place, and by the way it will actually be it will actually be that sort of replica of Earth rather than being an alternative in the first place. Yes, Pano, is my time still there?
The time is up. Thank you very much.
So as I conclude, my second speaker will be able to talk about these points and analyze and engage with what government comes with. Pano, we think we win tonight's debate. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, the first speaker. Let us have the second speaker take the floor.
Hi everybody. Am I audible?
Yes, you're very audible, sir.
Okay, just give me a few seconds to get my notes in order. My name is Peter, for those of you. I had to use another individual's phone. My phone has been messing up. I'm really, really sorry. Just give me a few seconds to get my notes in order, and I will let you guys know when I am going to start. Thank you. Okay. Am I still audible?
Yes, you're audible. Please begin.
Okay. Starting my speech in five. If you do have a POI, put it in the text space. I will take you guys like in my 15 minute, I think. Right. So yeah, starting my speech in five, four, three, two, one. Panel, the reason as to why we have missions to Mars, or the reason as to why we have Elon Musk trying to set up advocacies to ensure that we can actually colonize spaces like Mars, is to ensure that in a later time we're able to have another home. Why is that very important? It is important to note that the current globe we live in is actually heavily populated. Second and foremost, it does not have enough resources to be taken round the table, which means we need to have sustainable ways of utilizing the current ones to actually find many homes. The problem with this is that if we go ahead and capitalize all of it, it means we're going to privatize. It means that too, we're going to be exploiting consumers. Paul was able to come out here and show you how, in and of itself, in the long run, the poor people not always going to be taken advantage of. Why? Because the opposition themselves understand that we have a group of business people who usually focus on profits. So we think when you put that on a pivot line, it is better for us to have one government, nationalize it. Governments such as the UN that are usually going to have equal funding from like the IMF to actually fund most of these activities in the country, and give you most of these activities in the country, and give you better meditation in the long run to actually access your goals. It is because of this that if you've looked at private sectors such as the likes of Elon Musk, since 2018, we're in 2021, there has been delay. Why? Because he has the technical know-how. He still lacks most of the monies that are going to be needed. Even if he's a billionaire, you cannot always have all the money in the world. So we think that if you're going to have an international body being able to take part in this introduction, in one, you're having a much more financial way in utilizing your freedom and accessing it. Proud to begin from the proposition. So let's go through what opposition tells us. Opposition tells us, they come out and tell us the nature of government and how they're going to politicize and militarize. We try to share them the info slide. It shows you one thing, that you see the main reason as why we're going up there is to colonize Mars. It's not to go and fight aliens if actually they exist. This is something they needed to understand as the nature of the government, right? But still, second, Paul shows you the nature of governments and shows you that one, they have better capacity. Why? They come in a collective retrospect, which means that if you're collective enough, you have better resources to actually go out there and fight and reach for a common cause. It means that there's better unity, and it means that there's better utilization of time. That is the nature of the government. So let's go on to the second point. They tell us, okay, the apparatus that we have in place to actually access it. It means that you also, as a government, are going to take care of people at the grassroots level. It means that you give accountability. That is the nature of a government. So let me show you the nature of private companies first. That you're going to they're usually going to go ahead and exploit consumers. What does it mean by exploiting consumers? It means at the end of the day, if you are a person in Uganda, a third world country, you're not going to be considered. Why? Because a billionaire is actually focusing on getting most of his profits, right? But still, second and foremost, like if you get a monopoly as a private sector company, it means that one, you're going to be living to inequality. We have showed you how the poor people are not going to be taken into consideration. But still, second and foremost, you're going to be damaging the regulation. It means that you have the boom, you set the prices, your employees can always be paid at low wages. Why? Because government is not usually involved in the entire process. So they're telling us, okay, there are policies that have come out. We give them examples that have happened in Western Africa, where private companies have gone ahead to spill oil. We think private companies do not have the capacity to hold themselves accountable, and we think it is very culpable. Why? Because it's very stringent for a private company to actually access that unity that it needs in terms of buying. Why? Because most individuals, like we showed you at the grassroots level, will not always be taken into accountability. But still, second, even an individual at a higher class level will have to pay lots of money to go ahead and exercise. So we think the nature of the government, they lose out. So let's go on to the second point. They tell us why not go ahead. They tell us problems that come out of, they tell us they're going to have greater sustainability. This is the problem with greater sustainability. If you have billionaires focusing on investment, it means the billionaire is going to be focusing on one thing: to stay sustainable, for you to be able to, one, get much more profit. This is the problem with what private sectors give you. What we give you on a second hand on our side is one thing. First, that we ensure in the long run you have much more sustainability. You're able to go out there not only for profits, but to actually go and study further, to develop science, to ensure that you're going to create a better home for you. We're not only saying that you're going to go out there and colonize, but we need science. We need people to have better homes. This is what we've been advocating for as a government. So with all those two cases that our opposition seems to have as very important, we think they lose out. So what was our point basically, panel? We showed you that first, our model is going to be very simple. One, we're going to be handing over to global. If you have a POI, text it in the text space. I will be looking at the text space. But you shoot your POI and text it in the text space. If you have a POI, text it in the text space. But you shoot your POI and text it in the text space. If you have a POI, text it in the text space. But you shoot your POI and text it in the text space. But you shoot your POI and text it in the text space. But you have a POI, text it in the text space. But you shoot your POI and text it in the text space. But you shoot your POI and text it in the text space. But you have a POI, text it in the text space. But you shoot your POI and text it in the text space. But you have a POI, text it in the text space. But you have a POI, text it in the text space. But you have a POI, text it in the text space. But you have a POI, text it in the text space. But you have a POI, text it in the text space. But you have a POI, text it in the text space. But you have a POI, text it in the text space. But you have a POI, text it in the text space. But you have a POI, text it in the text space. But you have a POI, text it in the text spa
Okay, thank you so much. We tell you the reason as to why we are colonizing Mars in the first place is for it to act as an alternative. So we need you to show us how you are going to create it as an alternative, yet you are living in the nature of autocracy, dictatorship, or how you are not going to politicize all this mission, right? So thank you.
Okay, I've got you. Fine. Let me answer that point in our model. Our model meant one thing. We're handing over to the global government. Global governments look like the UN, governments that have been put in place to take care of each and every individual, be it one who is at the higher level, second and foremost, who is at the lower level. What the global government does is one, they collectively unify, get all the money that is needed, get all the know-who that is needed, and ensure that we have very many vast ways of actually approaching Mars and being able to colonize Mars. It will not only be Elon Musk who is doing it, but it means that Paris will be able to take advantage of it. Also, the United States of America, countries like France will be able to take advantage of it. Understand how you have much more sustainability, that there is equal buying, but second and foremost, you have a better format of actually accessing this. Why? Because you're not only focusing as a billionaire, but you have other individuals such as governments, unified governments that are actually going to set prices that are going to ensure that one, you're going to be compensating the former owners who have actually been taken advantage of, owners who will later on go and sue you and reduce on your priority in terms of time taking. We think this is much more important. That answers their POI, right? But still, second and foremost, let me take you through our model. Our model made that you see all nations will be part of the decision making process. What does that mean? It means that if we're going to be focusing on a decision making, we're going to be focusing on issues to deal with climate change, issues to deal with energy, issues to deal with security, issues to deal with the environment, things that Elon Musk doesn't really put into consideration. And their private companies are going to come out and tell us that, okay, we're going to sit down as necessary ion and go ahead, but we're not going to give them accountability. Why? Because we are private owners. What we show you as a government or as a unified government, one, we make decisions that are not only going to be important, but decisions that are going to be much more long lasting. This is how we get much more sustainability in the long run. Why? Because decision is made not person, but multiple individuals, right? Supporting the employees, it means that there's not going to be systems where because you have a monopoly as a private sector, you're going to decide how much amount of money is going to be given to people. We think that doesn't come on our side. Why? Because there are rules, there are regulations, and there's going to be accountability, which Paul showed you the social contract theory, which means accountability, representation, and participation in the long run, right? This comes from our side, but we do not see how it comes from their side, right? But still moving forward. Oh, my time is done, right? Is it?
Thank you very much for that debate.
Okay, with that rest, okay, it's proud to win.
Please, this is the finals round. I don't really want to disturb people with their speeches, so I expect us to have our timers on. With that said, let us have the second op speaker take the floor.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. Please begin when ready.
Okay, so I'll be starting in three, two, one. Government is like out because we already tell you that there are so many autocratic people in nature, so that means there is disenfranchisement of people. That means a lot of people's rights are going to be abused. Like I mean, they don't even give you justification like as to how that is like unlikely in their world. People don't have like 17 arguments. I'm not sure why like how Peter worsens everything they say, how Paul makes everything worse from the start. So I'm going to run you two extensions, one on the conflict and two on the on the nature of governments. Before that, I have one, two, three, four, five pieces of rebuttal. So they talk about capacity, that they have more capacity on their end. Four responses. One, we tell you that there is militarization and politicizing. That means that this can become like politicized and like manipulated by governments. You have seen government take over projects, nuclear issues. We have seen over US like oppressing other countries not to make nuclear weapons because they are militarizing and politicizing the use of like uranium on like a global scale. So they have to show us why that's unlikely on their side. Two, they tell us that we tell you that resources that come from the government, we tell you that these like are not compared to the private sector. Not everything we tell you in our speech is that, oh, we think that government, yes, has the capacity, but we tell you that private people are those that have more of the why? Because most of the funding that they get comes from the private sector itself. We don't think that government projects contribute so much to GDP or any sort of projects like that. So it's like basically government that is running all these things. Third thing, The thing is, like, the question on why the government didn't set this up. We think governments have like over 500,000 people or even 20k like people that set up these projects, etc., that make up for these things. How does one person outthink 20 people to set up a specific project? So that's like why we find it like nonsensical. We think that the problem here is that there's the issue of capacity, i.e., that then the governments do not actually have the capacity or have less capacity than the other people, because the other people have a lot of money and have like the risk and are able to get that money and make specific risks. So for them, it's like, yeah, they can make the risks and like make it happen. For government, they're too scared because they don't have the money. Fourth thing, question on the private sector has the best, like, resources. Like, we tell you that most of the companies on a global scale, iPhone, etc., and all these are not related with government at all. All these are private entities that thrive on the international market. Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk making the card. All these are not government like owned stuff. This is private sector. So we think that private sector knows best how to like solve this sort of thing. So we think it's basically nonsensical for you to come and tell me that government has capacity to hand over to the US. They say that the US, we're going to hand over all this to the US. Nonsensical. One, capacity. We tell you, I've already shown you why capacity is highly unlikely on their side. I don't really need to go through that. We tell you that there is an issue of influence and manipulation because the US and any other superpowers or any other capable countries to sort of like nationalize these things have so much influence in the spectrum. That means that they do things that would be able to favor them because they know they can oppress and compromise small and weaker countries. So we think that is something that we should like take on worth like on our side, something that we think like we should like prioritize. But then we tell you that these other countries like which are big and not like answerable. So on a general basis, we tell you that then their issue will not work. Nationalization will be like very bad of a problem. So it won't serve the purpose that they want to serve. But then let's chip in this whole idea of unified government, right? We tell you that yes, you might want a unified government, but you can have all 17 unified autocratic governments. So you like sort of like still get oppression, something that we're going to show in the nature of governments like later on. Moving on, privatization has prices. They come and tell that privatization like has so many prices, how they exploit people. No, we tell you this is not true because we tell you that government sets the prices, but with poor quality and poor execution, poor service delivery, etc. This has been the nature of governments because they keep on selling these things. Their things are not sustainable, i.e., they lack sustainability. Government projects, yes, might look so good like in Paul's world in the first 2 years, but in the next 10 years, because you're not going to take 1-2 years to colonize Mars, you take probably forever, like he tells you. In the forever, like long run, you won't get the utility that you're getting because government will then be less lazy. They have so many things to work on, Black Lives Matter movements, they have so many things to cater for, like minority groups to cater for, Muslim women. At the end of the day, you don't get the efficiency that you decide to get. But then we tell you that again, we tell you that privatization is better because you get these people are like focused on service delivery or delivering like that specific service. So they don't really like have so much things like moving around their minds for them to like divert their attention to serving their people. We think that's like important and should be like valued. So we tell you that these people can even run cheaper things because of competition with other people. So Elon Musk can run these things cheaply because they're like sort of like trying to compete, right? So they come and tell you about social contract. We think this is like bogus because you're even on our side. We tell you like Ian tells you, we care about the people too. We care about how they get like services and etc. and how they get access to all these things. We also care about them. So we do everything we can to make them happy so they can keep on coming back every single day. So we think that even us, we care about the well-being of individuals. Exploitation, their biggest argument. I'm going to show you how that's bogus. We tell you that in a best case world, they would rather use a lot of the resources and exploit them than leave them idle. We think that the utility you get from exploitation is far more than when the government leaves these things idle because they say we don't want people to exploit them or ruin them, etc. They come and tell you about the minimum factors because they don't benefit because the government is like really like very sacrificial. They don't do things because of no benefit. We tell you that these people do high taxation. We have seen governments in African set up LDCs that are taxing these people so highly with outrageous tax amounts. Like imagine, how does a country tax you 60% of your earnings? This is basically Ghana. So we think that this is something that we have to tell you. We tell you that these people even marginalize these people to like squeeze them out and like give them high taxes, give them high fines. Nonsense. Moving on to my extensions, right? Sure. nature of government. We tell you that two strands to this. We tell you that they are lazy governments, like we already told you. Most of the governments do not put much attention to give proportional like effectiveness for service delivery. That means that it cuts down the delivery or the ability to like deliver services at the end of the day, even in the long run. So that already shows you that governments always are in their comfort zones after 3 years. We tell you it's okay. In the best case world, it's achievable in private side government in the first 2 years. Our argument is that they are not sustainable, i.e., in the next 5 years, as you're still colonizing, projects, Black Lives Matter movement, it has happened with initiatives, Brexit, all this. We have already shown you how all this is specifically happening on our side. We tell you that. So second strand, we tell you how the draconian governments, like Ian already tells you this. Like we tell you how these people like end up like, we tell you that you still get an autocratic state even in the end of that day, because you can even have 17 of them. What that does is that you
Very
get
much.
like less,
Thank you
because
very
there's more people still get oppressed. Opposition has to tell us why all these things are something not worth it out, or why their stuff weighs out more. Never been my
Okay. Thank you very much. That's it. Can we have the proposed speaker, proposition speaker?
Okay, so am I audible?
Yes, you're very audible. Please do.
Okay, so at any point that I break off, please do well to tell me. I'll begin in the next 3, 2, 1, go. Panel, I'm going to first show you that if we engage one thing in this debate, then there has been no engagement from the side of opposition, right? One thing they fail to understand is that they think that a collective government literally looks like Zimbabwe or Uganda, which are ineffective in the long run, right? What a collective government looks like is like having the UN, is like having the AU, is like having something like the International Monetary Fund or the World Bank, right? So come and tell us of the taxes of the people or anything. We think that that was already out of the debate when we give you a clear model of having a collective government, which they fail to understand right from the first speaker to the second speaker. So we think that the third speaker, in order to win them this debate, they should show us how these collective governments have actually been inefficient, they have not been accountable to people, how they lack resources, or how there is exploitation that is exclusive on our own side when you have such collective governments, right? So now let's begin. From my speech, you're going to get at most 5 things. Number one, speaker per speaker clash. Secondly, you're going to get like what has been the order or the clash of the debate. Thirdly, where the debate, the impact, and re-emphasize our model. And fifthly, I'm going to show you the comparative on both sides, right? So, Panna, what do we get from Ian? From Ian, we get this narrative that you see, we think we need these private entities or we need these private owners because we think that what they put at best is for the best of the people, right? But notice that how private ownership works, right, from what Peter and Paul tell you, is the fact that they work on the best of capitalism, right? They want to benefit for their own good, where it looks like it is the market or there is no government intervention that is going to exist, right? So the point in time that they decided to exploit people and marginalize the poor who are not going to be able like to travel, let's say like to Mars at a point in time that you've colonized Mars, they're not going to benefit from the profits. But secondly, they're not going to get like those resources or those minerals that are existing at Mars because of the hegemonic structure that does exist, right? But thirdly, notice that what it entails in the private ownership is like the selfish interests of each of the individuals existing, right? So we think at that best they do not actually they do not maximize the people's welfare or social welfare. What they do maximize is profits, right? So we think that profits are not synonymous to people to tell us that in their own world they're going to have like people, right? But secondly, notice that there is no way you're going to hold like Elon Musk or any private entity like accountable. They do not have any obligation towards the people. What they are doing is for their own, for themselves and for their entirety, right? So the point in time that you tell us that you're going to get accountability on your own side, then we think that that is when you get
I believe I have lost you, Denise.
there are still mechanisms that government can be out. Yes.
We lost you from
Where did you lose me from?
10 words before you spoke that. So begin.
Before, before I spoke what?
We lost you just as after chapter, you spoke about the
Pardon?
hegemonic
Oh,
structure.
accountability. Okay. So from the point of accountability. Oh, okay, sure. Let me begin from there. So notice that there is that sort of hegemonic structure that does exist where the poor are not going to benefit because they cannot compete in that private entity. What does exist is monopoly, right? At a point in time that you have this monopoly, you're going to sort of cause like a boost and power thing in economics, right? Where you're going to depend on the market structure and everything, right? So we think that you cannot.
We have again lost you,
Right. There is
Devin.
nothing that you're going to tell him that, you know what, Elon Musk, I'm supposed to hold you accountable for myself being an organization, right? Oh, okay. So, okay, I'll continue from where I'd stopped on accountability, right? So we think that there is no accountability in their world, but how best do you get accountability in your own world? Accountability is best gotten in our world because of the social contract that does exist of the various governments that are going to come together to make this collective government, right? This is a point in time that if these governments do not deliver to the people, or if they do not promote like equality, or they do not benefit from the people colonizing Mars, then the people can hold them accountable and oust those governments. We think that it sort of creates like effectiveness and transparency in the long run, which should not get on the side of a monopolist or a person who is going to consider themselves, right? But thirdly, what has been our model in this debate, right? We gave you 5 things on the model, right? Number one, we told you that what you need to do is like a global government, right? But what opposition assumes is that we talk about a global government looking like an effective government, like say Uganda or Zimbabwe, right? What a global government looks like is something like the UN, where countries come together to manage something, right? So we think at this point there is increased accountability because of the increased governments that are existing in such a collective government, right? But secondly, we told you that even though Elon Musk was to complain or any of these private entities, we think that there is that ability to compensate the former owners if these countries all came together, or these governments, right? But thirdly, we think we need to all to question where do you best get ability, because this has sort of like, it wanted to be a clash.
Denise,
Continuously get the resources, right? You lost me again. Did you lose me again?
continue.
Oh.
Continue.
Okay, so we think that what happens at the end of it all is that all
Okay, so POI.
I'm not taking you. So what happens at the end of it all is that all nations this decision making, which
Okay.
accounts for the effectiveness and the sustainability that is supposed to take place, right? But fifthly, what we tell you is that you get to maintain all employees. Notice that what private entities do is that they cut the people or they cut the supply in order to increase like the sale or anything that is existing, right? The point in time that they do not want to spend a lot, but they want to benefit, then they're going to like cut employees, right? But fifthly, what we tell you on our model is that every government will be able to benefit from such and not only like marginalizing these people. If Mars was to be like another option, right? So it sort of benefits like the various governments existing, right?
POI.
Henry, I won't take your POI. Period. So what is the question? Who has the capacity? Where is the capacity? And who ensures that people, all the stakeholders, there is no marginalization of people existing, like they want to make it look like the US is not going to head such a body or anything. We think that all countries have a decision making in this collective government, right? So we think that there is that capacity of resources that is going to enable like this exploration or the colonization of Mars, which a private entity does not do like in its own fulfillment, right? But secondly, we think that to the extent that you want to talk about capitalism, it can be in checks and balances, given that there is that social contract. And most of these governments would be at the verge of being ousted if they were not accountable to the people, right? But thirdly, what you need to all to understand is that we need to stop like the exploitation or the of these countries by the means of bargaining that would sort of exist. And what we address in our own side is the limited funds, the inaccountability or the inefficiency that would do exist. And with that, we think that you get redress for the poor and the countries all come together to be harmonious, right? So that sort of creates like peace in our own world. And those are 10 things we tell you from our side, which are failed to be engaged, right? So on a comparative that we opted in the world of team team opposition, what it looks like is that at one point you're going to have limited funds because we tell you that these resources, that even though they were gotten, there is going to be that ideological difference, or the things most of the countries would be fighting to actually have this to themselves, right? But at the point that you have a collective government, which are not autocratic and not an individual government, then we think that there is accountability, but also there is redress for the poor. But thirdly, you get to curtail the exploitation and the countries that would do exist on this, right? So we think that from our speeches, what we give you in this debate, we show you the best where you best get capacity, but also sustainability, like to continuously carry out this colonization at mass even when you've reached. But thirdly, you do not carry out that hegemonic structure and that inequality that exists in a world of team opposition. Never been proud.
Thank you very much. The third prop speaker. Let us have the third prop speaker. Take the floor.
Okay, so am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. Please begin when ready.
All right. So I'm starting now. So ladies and gentlemen, I would like to start off by of course giving a few rebuttals that will be accounting for the points that the last speaker, the recent speaker, has just given. So first off, ladies and gentlemen, she talked of how there is going to actually be no accountability in our world, simply because she's talking of how we are going to only be seeing Elon Musk as an individual, right? But then, ladies and gentlemen, note, I'm not going to repeat this explanation, but I believe the second opposition speaker talked about this very well, right? And then she goes on to tell us of how the collective governments will be in the form of UN and not actually the ones of Uganda or Zimbabwe and the likes. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to ask each and every one of us if we do know that yes, the UN does exist, but do all countries are all countries submissive to the United Nations? No, they are not. In the form of superpowers, right? So we do believe that however much you claim that there is going to be a collective government like the UN, I quote, ladies and gentlemen, we shall still have countries that are not going to be submissive. And to be particular, most particular, these countries are the countries known as the superpowers. And that's where we brought in the point of how these countries are going to actually use this to politicize and militarize the access of SpaceX. It's not that we are planning on fighting the aliens like the second proposition speaker claimed. We're not talking about fighting aliens. We're actually talking about how these governments are naturally like this. And so since we have that uh, form of government whereby there is a particular superpower that will want to overrule no matter what happens or wherever, we see that this is what's going to be going on, right? So I believe the second speaker from the opposition gave that explanation very well, right? And then I would like to go on to that point of how they talked of how they're going to hand over the entire ownership to the government, and how they believe their points such as capitalism, marginalization, then the collective action and the likes are going to work out. But first off, I would like to start by posing a few questions before going to the clash points of today's debate, right? So first of all, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to be I would like to ask the proposition bench if they consider the current status quo or how the governments are currently, right? To be particular, since they claim that the collective government will be in form of the UN, I would like to ask them if they know what is currently occurring, right? Is the United Nations even able to actually carry out such a big mission such as colonizing Mars, and yet they have even failed to control the corona pandemic within this world? So we do see that the government or the entire the entire UN or the likes or the collective government, however much they can come together, you can't tell me that you're going to serve two masters at a go. You can't tell me you'll try to save this world and then go on and create another world, right? That's why we come up and tell you that, hey, as the government or as the so-called collective government concentrates on making Earth a better, more like a better place, how about we also have someone who knows what to do, who knows how to fund, who knows how the whole spacewalk acts with the entire company and his professionals to deal with it, right? That's why we are saying they cannot serve two masters at a go. And that's why we believe that colonization of Mars is not an easy thing, right? It's not something that can be done governments that have failed to control what is, right? That's why we are coming mission, because we believe they will have more concentration in it, right? So I would like to go on to the next question of how we do expect a collective government whereby, like I said, a collective government sort of having the superpowers and all the other countries, because the second speaker, I would like to quote the second speaker from the proposition came and told us of how all countries are going to take part in the decision making, ladies and gentlemen. Take note, all in the name of them trying to sugarcoat that each and every country is going to have a say, whereby even the third world countries are going to have, a hand in it, so that just sugar and tell us how they're trying to promote unity and the likes, right? But it's not even realistic. Why do we say this, ladies and gentlemen? Remember, too many cooks spoil the broth, right? So you're not going to tell me that you're going to even allow the third world countries to come and start even making decisions just in the name of sugarcoating that you're going to start creating unity. It doesn't make sense. That's why we believe that this special mission of colonizing Mars is not about creating a united world and so on. Why can't we unite the world currently on Earth, right? Because these same countries that are trying to sort of have a collective government are the same countries that are actually destroying planet Earth, and that's why we are seeking another planet, right? So I believe this the proportion bench is simply trying to sugarcoat the failures of the government by saying that they're going to form a collective government, which doesn't sound realistic, like I said. So, going to the clash points of today, ladies and gentlemen, they are mainly about exploitation, whereby they talked of how they're going to be selfish interests, since we're going to be talking about individuals like Elon Musk. Now, I would like to know this, ladies and gentlemen, selfish interests are not only how should I say, describing individuals, ladies and gentlemen. We do see it in the governments, we do see it in the United Nations, ladies and gentlemen. You can't tell me that everyone is going to be free from selfish interests. That's why, in the terms of exploitation or in the terms of the likes, that's why we came up and told you of how there's going to be regulation, of how the governments are going to regulate what the guys of Elon Musk are going to be doing, right? We're not saying that they're going to do everything anyhowly, no, but we do believe that what they do best, they can do best, right? We let them do what they can do as we start to cater for as if at all we are serious, create a collective government to actually save planet Earth, right? That's why we are saying that the selfish interest and the exploitation don't really come hand in hand, because we believe that selfish interest will always exist. Even if you plan on creating the Mars planet as a settlement for the human beings with a collective government, ladies and gentlemen, whether you like it or not, these governments are going to fight for Mars just like they have fought for Earth, whether we like it or not, given due to the nature of the governments, right? Politically, that is. That's why we are saying that if at all we have these individuals, if we have SpaceX cater for this mission, we shall be free from political issues and the likes, and we shall be able to concentrate on this bigger mission that the proportion bench tends to sort of not see its delicacy. Another point was of how they talked of financial position. Ladies and gentlemen, like I said, given the status quo, given what is occurring today, currently in this world, ladies and gentlemen, the government cannot fully sponsor or fund just like the proposition is starting to claim. Simply because you have a collective government or you have the UN, it doesn't mean it doesn't tell you that you're going to be able to fund such a very big mission of colonizing Mars, another planet. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that something bigger is occurring on Earth. So how are you going to tell me that you're going to manage to fund Earth, whatever is happening on Earth, and then go again to Mars, which is another planet, in the name of colonizing it? It doesn't really make sense. That's why we do believe that if we have SpaceX, which is concentrating on funding and sort of working on the colonization of Mars as their major aim, as their major goal, then we shall be able to see that it's going to work, and we shall not be losing out on two of them in the name of serving two masters at a go, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, the other part of how they talked of there was inefficiency in our world. We do go against it because we believe in privatization or in the likes of how the Elon Musk do their work. There is what they call competition, and so we do believe these people are going to be doing their very best to give us the very best results and so on. So I would like to rest my case by saying again, too many cooks spoil the broth. Thank you.
Okay, that was a very phantasmagorious. And let us have like
Am I audible? Am I audible?
audible.
Again, am I audible?
Yes, you're very audible.
Okay, so I'll be starting in 3, 2, and 1. So proposition comes and tells you the globe is dying, Earth is dying, we need a new home, and the new home must be Mars. We tell you it's perfectly fine. That's the stand from opposition. Our only difference is that we tell you we cannot, we should never put it in the hands of the countries of a nation, i.e., nationalize it. We prefer to give it to privatization bodies. Chair, notice We think that proposition brought very good arguments to that table, but the reason why they're out is because in the second speech, most importantly, and in the first speech, we show you the unlikeliness of these arguments, i.e., how these arguments are completely unlikely, like basically utopical, right? So we show you the likeliness of what we give you, right? And how it's like more workable. We think we win because two things were adjudicating, right? Chair. One, justification, and two, capacity, right? So, Chair, we think that in the debate, proposition comes and says, "Oh no, we are capable. We are capable. We can do this. These guys have resources. We have resources. We are rich. We care about our people." Let's break it down to you, right? We tell you, these guys are going to militarize it. Like they're going to make weapons. They're going to do a lot of things. They're going to do a lot of shady stuff to these people because they know they are superpower. No, we actually paid attention to their model. Why they say they want collective states. We told you the problem with these collective states is that at a point where they are big countries, i.e., superpowers, US won't concede for less. We all know that. We know that China, autocratic, draconian countries, won't concede to settle with third world countries and prefer to suck the life out of these countries, right? And the life out of their people and make life miserable, worse for them, violate their rights, give them this facility. We are looking for an alternative to go to Mars to find a better place than Earth. But we tell you that in our world, the place like looks exactly like Earth, or even worse than Earth. So we think that you don't get the utility that we try to give in our world, right? Chair, justification. We tell you that it's completely justified for us to have private people because they care about the people more than the social contract. We tell you, in the best case world that they bring the social contract, we tell you of the nature of the governments, how they are lazy. This analysis has not been touched. We gave you areas where governments have been so lazy on specific projects and how they can't multitask. All this was not touched. And this justified you the inability of government to deal with these sorts of projects, right? They didn't deal with this sort of analysis. But most importantly, we give them analysis of why exploitation is like literally something that we can trade off and like give in on. We tell you that there are laws that can make sure that these people are catered for. We tell you that the nature of government, like they don't give analysis, they don't like engage analysis on the draconian states. This was like extensive analysis that we gave in the second speech. They don't show you why most of the arguments are not true. They don't show you why everything that I disclaim or why these responses are not objectively true. We win because we justify you the burden of opposition, of rebutting, refuting, and showing you why everything is nonsense. Opposition does not justify to you proof, they said completely nothing. Chair, we win from opposition. Thank you.
Very much, proposition. Let us have team proposition reply speech.
Hello, I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you're audible, sir. Please take the floor.
I think Peter is not in, so I'll just do the speech. Okay, I'll be starting shortly. Let me just see. Okay. So, panel, if this debate was a debate about who is more aggressive in their speeches and who is much more better in their word selection, then obviously it would be team opposition because realize that they use words that they think are more persuasive or that they think are more effective. But we think this debate is not about that. This debate entirely is about nationalization and of space exmission and the privatization that exists. We say that the former plays much more better compared to the latter. And we gave a couple of reasons that still we think that were not responded to, because I'm going to show you how they aren't responded to. So the only thing that you get from opposition are two things. The first thing, they talk about private sectors and the nature of governments. But we tell you, firstly, on private sectors, is on because they say that private sectors literally contribute much more better to the GDP. We say that that is actually a collective effort of private sectors. It is not as an individual private sector. An individual private sector basically means that how much does one specific individual contribute? We think that it does not even contribute to 1% of what governments actually get from any specific jurisdiction. So we think that there is necessity for us to understand that. But secondly, when they talk about nature of governments, that they are political, autocratic, and all that, we say that that's actually not true. Why? Because realize that governments that are collective, that's to say a collective government looks like because for them they think it's only like the UN, they think it's beyond UN. We say it looks like things like the World Bank, it looks like things like the IMF, it looks like things things like the World Health Organization that are dominated by majority of the countries that exist. That's to say, even if their third speaker says that there are some countries that are non-submissive, we say that there are very minimal countries that are non-submissive. But even when they are non-submissive, still they will be vetted out because individuals in that specific jurisdiction prefer to be part of that specific organization. That's to say, like if someone wants to, if a country sees the benefit of World Health Organization, then people will vet out that government so that they actually have that capacity to still be part of it. So the next government will know to do better than to actually refuse this kind of privilege. So we say that nature of collective government is that they actually do not compromise any other person. But the third thing to say, on when they say that there are some lazy governments that literally will still not participate in terms of like a contribution. You say that that's also still solved under our side. That's to say, they can still be vetted out for everyone's sake. At the point where they can be vetted out, then we think that we still have some form of self-checking mechanism on our side. The best test that you get from their side is on the question of superpowers dominance. We say, how often does a superpower like the US dominate in organizations like the World Health Organization? We think that never. Why? Because those organizations operate independently. That means a collective government operates by consensus, and that means even if it is a superpower, they will still have the same capacity to vet like the others. The best case for opposition to win this debate was if they were to run their case on the necessity to maintain individual creativity and returns. We tell you from our side that we still cater for governments to benefit, but also for the mission to still be sustainable because governments have much more better potential in terms of resources, in terms of limited marginalization, in terms of curtailment of exploitation. We tell you all those things that are entirely unresponded to. Proud to you.
Thank you very much, wonderful debaters. We are glad and honored for this great golden opportunity for you to attend this debate. Also, I would like to thank everyone who was a part of this debate. The two teams, actually, Agaba Ian, Henry, Jerome, Calvin, Sima, Odong, Okuku, Paul, and Rayma, and Mr. Tahinduka Joseph. Thank you very much for making it. We shall have deliberation of this giant grand finals, and results shall be announced tomorrow as per the schedule. This is to enable us, we can sleep with the results. Tomorrow they can change depending on the deliberation that we shall have. But be in sure hands that we shall deliberate and give the most appealing results according to the deliberation or according to what you have given to us. So thank you very much. I am requesting the judges only to remain. Have a good send off. Have a good send off.